The door creaked slightly as I pushed it open, and for a moment, I wished I hadn't, because the sight in front of me shattered the last pieces of my heart. There, tangled in my bedsheets, was my husband, my Ryan, and my mother. Helen was on her hands and knees, her back arched as Ryan gripped her hips from behind. His face was buried in the curve of her shoulder, his fingers digging into her skin, moving in a way that was too familiar, too intimate. The moans, the breathy gasps, the way he whispered her name. I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. My body went cold, my mind screaming at me to do something, to move, to yell, to tear them apart. But for a second, I just froze, because there was no way this was real. Let me pause for a second. If you've made it this far, you are clearly intrigued. This is just the beginning of this explosive tale. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more stories like this. Trust me, it gets more interesting. Let's go back to how it all began. Ryan and I had a beautiful marriage, or so I thought. We weren't just husband and wife. We were best friends, partners, and lovers. We had been together for 8 years, married for 5. Our home was filled with love, laughter, and the kind of warmth that made people jealous. And then, of course, there was my mother, Helen. She was my role model, my guiding light, my biggest supporter. After my father passed away 5 years ago, she became even more involved in my life. She was always there, helping around the house, offering advice, being my safe place. I never imagined that she would become the person who would rip my world apart. Ryan was everything I wanted in a husband. He was handsome, ambitious, and deeply caring. Every morning, he kissed me awake, whispering sweet nothings in my ear. Every evening, he came home with a tired but loving smile, always making time to ask about my day. Our sex life was passionate, our conversations endless. We had our challenges like any couple, but nothing ever seemed serious. If I was ever upset, he reassured me with those deep brown eyes and soft words that melted my worries away. Helen adored Ryan, and the feeling was mutual. They had always gotten along well. Too well, in hindsight. Looking back, the signs were there. Little things that seemed insignificant at the time, but now make my stomach turn. Like how Ryan would stand up the moment my mother entered the room, always ready to assist her in any way. How his eyes would linger on her just a little too long when she spoke. How he'd laugh at her jokes in a way that felt different. Too attentive, too charmed. I also noticed how my mother seemed to dress differently when she came over. She used to be casual, but in the past year, her outfits became more intentional. Tighter jeans, lower necklines. Perfume I only ever smelled on younger women looking to impress. Once I caught them having a whispered conversation in the kitchen. The moment I walked in, they froze, then quickly changed the subject. I laughed it off, thinking they were planning a surprise for me. God, how stupid I was. It was a Friday night, and as usual, my mother was over for dinner. I'd made steak and mashed potatoes, one of Ryan's favorites. We were seated at the dining table, laughing and sharing stories. Ryan was pouring wine into my mother's glass when his hand brushed against hers. It was barely a touch, so brief, it should have meant nothing. But the way they locked eyes, just for a split second, made my stomach tighten. I remember sitting there, feeling something. I couldn't put it into words at the time. It wasn't suspicion, not exactly. It was more like an unease, like my subconscious was trying to tell me something my heart wasn't ready to hear. I shook it off and forced myself to smile. The moment that truly made my gut clench happened a few weeks later. I was cleaning our bedroom when Ryan's phone, which he had left charging on the nightstand, lit up. I wasn't one to snoop, but something made me glance at the screen. A message from Helen with a heart eyes emoji. I frowned. I had never seen that contact name before. My mother's name in his phone had always been just Helen. The heart symbol was new. Curious, I unlocked the phone. I didn't even have to dig. The latest message read, "Last night was amazing. I can still feel you on me. Can't wait to do it again." My world tilted. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Maybe I was misinterpreting. Maybe this was meant for someone else. Maybe. Then I scrolled up, and what I saw shattered me. Messages upon messages, flirty, teasing, deeply intimate, conversations that belonged between lovers, talk of secret meetings, of stolen kisses, of nights spent tangled in sheets. I felt like throwing up. My ears were ringing. My heart was pounding so loudly it drowned out all rational thought. I'd always trusted my husband. I'd always trusted my mother. And now, they were both betraying me in the most unforgivable way. I dropped the phone onto the bed, my breath shaky. There was no denying it anymore. The man I loved was sleeping with my mother. And I was about to find out just how deep their betrayal went. I wanted to believe it was a mistake. As I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at Ryan's phone, my mind desperately searched for an explanation. Maybe this was a joke. Maybe it was some kind of misunderstanding. But the truth was right there, written in their words. I can still feel you on me. It played over and over in my head, making me feel sick. My husband, my Ryan, had touched my mother in ways he was only supposed to touch me. I should have screamed. I should have confronted him that very moment. But I didn't. Instead, I set the phone down, wiped my tears, and forced myself to act normal. Because before I exploded, I needed to know the full truth. I thought back to the past few months, replaying every moment that suddenly made sense. Ryan had been distant, but not in an obvious way. He still kissed me, still made love to me, still told me I was beautiful. But something about his touch had changed. It wasn't desperate or hungry like it used to be. It was almost mechanical, like he was going through the motions. Our late night conversations had grown shorter. His phone, which used to be left lying around carelessly, was now always face down. He had started taking longer showers. And then there was my mother. She had started coming over more frequently, even when I wasn't home. At first, I thought it was sweet that she was just keeping Ryan company while I was out. But now it was clear she wasn't visiting me. She was visiting him. A week before I found the messages, my best friend Lisa had pulled me aside. "Stephanie," she said hesitantly, "I don't want to start trouble, but have you noticed how Ryan and your mom act around each other?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" She hesitated. "It's just the way they look at each other. The way he always seems to be touching her in little ways. The way she laughs at everything he says." I had rolled my eyes and waved her off. "Lisa, come on. That's my mother you're talking about." She gave me a tight-lipped smile. "I know. That's why I hope I'm wrong." I didn't take her seriously. I didn't even give it a second thought. But now, I wished I had. That evening, I decided to test Ryan. I needed to see it for myself, to catch even the smallest crack in his lies. I waited until we were in bed, lying under the soft glow of our bedside lamp. "Ryan," I murmured, tracing a finger down his arm, "do you think my mom is beautiful?" It was a strange question, but I watched his face carefully. He stiffened. It was quick, almost imperceptible, but I saw it. Yeah, I mean, she's a beautiful woman." "Why?" He tried to act casual, but I noticed how his voice lacked its usual ease. I forced a small laugh. "Lisa said you and Mom act weird around each other. Isn't that ridiculous?" Ryan chuckled, but it was forced. Yeah, totally ridiculous. I smiled and kissed his cheek. I thought so too, but deep inside, my heart was pounding. Because now, I knew. I decided to test my mother next. The following afternoon, I invited her for coffee. We sat in the kitchen, sipping from our mugs, talking about random things. Recipes, a new show she was watching, the usual small talk. Then I leaned in and asked casually, Mom, has Ryan ever flirted with you? She blinked, clearly caught off guard. What? No, of course not. Why would you ask that? I studied her face. She was a beautiful woman, even in her late 50s. Her skin still smooth, her figure still enviable. I shrugged. Lisa mentioned something weird the other day. She said, you and Ryan seem close. Helen's fingers tightened around her mug. That's ridiculous. Lisa always had a big mouth. Her reaction was too defensive. And that's when I saw it. The flicker of guilt in her eyes. It was brief, just a split second, but it was enough. She quickly changed the subject, but I wasn't listening anymore. 'Cause now I didn't just suspect. Now I knew I had two choices. Confront them immediately, or wait until I had undeniable proof. I chose the latter. Because if I was going to destroy them, I wanted there to be no escape. So I made a plan. I told Ryan I had to leave town for a weekend trip with Lisa. I even packed a small suitcase and kissed him goodbye. I watched as my mother's car pulled into the driveway just 20 minutes after I left. Then I drove down the street, parked out of sight, and waited. 3 hours later, I returned home quietly, using the spare key to unlock the back door. The house was silent, but I knew. I knew. I walked up the stairs, my heart pounding with every step. And when I opened my bedroom door, I saw everything. The door creaked slightly as I pushed it open, and for a moment, I wished I hadn't, because the sight in front of me shattered the last pieces of my heart. There, tangled in my bedsheets, was my husband, my Ryan, and my mother. Helen was on her hands and knees, her back arched as Ryan gripped her hips from behind. His face was buried in the curve of her shoulder, his fingers digging into her skin, moving in a way that was too familiar, too intimate, the moans, the breathy gasps, the way he whispered her name. I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. My body went cold, my mind screaming at me to do something, to move, to yell, to tear them apart. But for a second, I just froze. Because there was no way this was real. I wanted to believe I was hallucinating, that my eyes were deceiving me. But then Ryan groaned, his voice deep with pleasure, and I knew this was real. They hadn't even noticed me yet. They were too lost in each other, and that hurt more than anything. It wasn't until I let out a sharp, choked breath that they finally realized they weren't alone. Ryan's head snapped up first, his eyes wide with panic. Helen turned next, and the moment she saw me, she gasped, scrambling for the sheets to cover herself. Stephanie! Ryan's voice was hoarse, desperate. He jumped off the bed, yanking a pillow to cover himself, his chest rising and falling rapidly. I stood there, my hands clenched at my sides, my whole body shaking. Neither of them spoke for a second. They just stared at me, naked, exposed, guilty. And then something inside me snapped. You disgusting, sick pieces of shit. My voice came out eerily calm, but I could feel the fire behind it. Ryan reached for me. Stephanie, please. Don't you dare touch me, I shrieked, stumbling back. My heart was racing, my vision blurring with tears. Helen finally found her voice. Sweetheart, Let me explain. I turned on her so fast she flinched. Explain what? That you've been screwing my husband behind my back? That the woman who gave birth to me is now sleeping with the man I married? Tears welled in her eyes. It's not what you think. I let out a harsh, bitter laugh. Oh, because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like what I think. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, looking like he wanted to die. Stephanie, I never meant for this to happen. Bullshit, I screamed. The pain, the betrayal, the absolute rage inside me was suffocating. My hands were trembling so badly, I had to curl them into fists just to keep from breaking. Ryan took a cautious step toward me, his face pleading. I love you. I swear to God, I love you. I scoffed. You don't get to say that. You don't get to love me while you're screwing my mother. Helen wiped at her tears. It was a mistake. A mistake? I spat. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is saying the wrong name in bed. But this, I gestured to the rumpled sheets, to them. This is a choice. A selfish, disgusting choice. Ryan exhaled shakily. I never wanted to hurt you. I glared at him. But you did. You both did. And you know what's funny? I saw the signs. I just didn't want to believe them. But you made me feel crazy. You made me think I was overthinking when the truth was right in front of me this whole time. Helen reached out, but I backed away. Stephanie, honey, don't call me that. My voice cracked. You're not my mother. A real mother would never do this to her daughter. I could barely stand to look at them. Ryan, my husband, my partner, the man who vowed to be faithful to me, stood there, his body still flushed from what he had been doing with her. His lips, his hands, his entire body had been touching my mother just moments ago. And Helen? She wasn't just a mother. She was supposed to be my best friend. The one person in the world who should have protected me from this kind of pain. But instead, she was the one causing it. I shook my head, hot tears spilling down my cheeks. You've destroyed me, I whispered. Ryan flinched. Stephanie, please. I turned and walked out of the room before he could finish. I could hear them scrambling behind me. Ryan calling my name. Helen sobbing. But I didn't stop. I grabbed my car keys and stormed out of the house, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. I don't remember driving. I don't even remember getting to Lisa's house. All I remember is knocking on her door, my entire body trembling, my breath coming in gasps. And when she opened the door and saw my face, she didn't ask questions. She just pulled me into her arms as I collapsed, sobbing, because I had just lost everything. I didn't sleep that night. Even in Lisa's guest room, wrapped in the softest blankets, I felt cold. My mind wouldn't stop replaying what I had seen. My husband, my mother, in my bed. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ryan's hands on her body. I heard the way he groaned her name, the way my mother moaned for him. It was a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Lisa sat with me the whole night. She didn't ask questions, didn't push me to talk. She just let me exist in my pain, offering me silent comfort as I lay curled up on her couch, staring at the ceiling. By morning, I knew I couldn't hide forever. I had to face them. When I pulled into the driveway of my home, my hands trembled against the steering wheel. The house that once felt like my safe haven now felt like a prison filled with ghosts. I pushed open the door and stepped inside. The air was heavy, thick with tension. Ryan was sitting on the couch, his head buried in his hands. His hair was a mess, his eyes bloodshot. He looked like he hadn't slept either. When he saw me, he shot up immediately. Stephanie, shut up. My voice was ice. His mouth snapped shut, his eyes filling with panic. Then she appeared. Helen stepped out of the kitchen, her face pale, her expression fragile. She was still wearing the same clothes from last night. The guilt was written all over her. I clenched my fists. So how long? Ryan swallowed hard. Stephanie, how long? I demanded. Helen's lip trembled. It started 6 months ago. My stomach twisted violently. 6 months. For half a year, my husband and my mother had been sneaking around behind my back, lying to my face, sleeping together while I was busy being the good wife. I let out a hollow laugh. Wow. And here I was thinking it was just a stupid mistake. Ryan took a step closer. I swear it wasn't planned. It just happened. It just happened, I repeated, my voice dripping with venom. Oh, so you just tripped and fell into each other's arms? Into my bed? Over and over again? Ryan's face twisted in shame. He had no answer. I turned to Helen. And you? My mother? What the hell is wrong with you? Tears rolled down her cheeks. Stephanie, I never wanted to hurt you, I snapped. But you did. You both did. You weren't just some random woman, Mom. You were supposed to protect me. You were supposed to have my back. She sobbed harder, but I didn't care. I was done caring. I looked at Ryan with pure hatred. Tell me something, Ryan. Was she better? His face turned white. What? You heard me. Was she better than me? Did she make you feel things I never could? Ryan's lips parted, but no words came out. That silence was my answer. I felt something inside me break completely. I exhaled shakily and ran a hand through my hair. I can't do this. Ryan's eyes widened. Stephanie, wait. We can fix this. I love you. I stared at him. You love me? I scoffed. Ryan, you love yourself. That's why you did this. You didn't think about me. You didn't think about our marriage. You didn't think about anything but your own selfish needs. His face crumbled. I made a mistake. No, I said. A mistake is forgetting to pick up groceries. This question mark. This was a choice. Over and over again. Helen stepped forward, her voice soft. Stephanie, please. Don't let this destroy our relationship. I turned to her slowly. What relationship? She flinched. Because, Mom, I whispered bitterly, I don't have a mother anymore. A sob burst from her lips. Stephanie. I didn't let her finish. I turned on my heel and walked straight to the bedroom. The bed was still unmade from last night. The sheets smelled like them. I nearly threw up. I grabbed my suitcase and began packing everything. Ryan appeared at the door, panic in his eyes. What are you doing? I didn't answer. I grabbed more clothes, shoving them into my bag. He ran to me, grabbing my wrists. Stephanie, please don't leave. We can get past this. I ripped myself free. No, Ryan, you killed us. His whole body sagged. I love you. I picked up my wedding ring, stared at it for a long moment, then threw it straight at his chest. You don't deserve to say my name, I spat. Then, without another word, I walked out of the house and never looked back.